They make the cars. There's 8 other jobs of people working in the supplier network and making the supplies that go into the parts that go into those cars. And that the true task of a modern car company is to build a car with all these different parts coming from different companies in different places, and essentially build around those parts. And Toyota's success, in some ways, to a car expert's eyes, had to do with engineering a car around the deficiencies of those parts. Hyundai took a slightly different tack in terms of making more of its parts on its own. Hyundai does have an enormous supplier network also, and it's referred to as the Hyundai Mobius network, and that network is more integrated and more unified than most car company supplier networks. So the vertical integration is a key, and that shows the kind of disconnect with this efficiency number. Hyundai has produces 29.6 cars per worker versus Toyota 68.9. But when you factor in the fact that Hyundai workers are also making so many of those parts, that's why that car per worker metric is skewed. And that's a metric that's used in the auto industry that means less and less these days, and this is an example of that. So that's the history, and that's the present. And I want to finish the talk by talking about the future of the Korean automobile industry. I think that one issue is certainly the threat from China. There are dozens of Chinese car manufacturers that are trying to follow the Hyundai model and essentially doing what Hyundai did. I would make the argument that it's not easy, as Daewoo can attest to, and Hyundai too. It took decades to build that culture of quality that's needed to go into Europe and North American markets. So I don't foresee a tremendous immediate threat from China. From the Chinese manufacturers. And in fact, China represents a significant export market for the Korean car manufacturers. I think that the Korean domestic market gets a little bit of a bad rap. Some people feel that it's a closed market. It's not. It's a competitive market. There are American car companies selling there. There are Japanese car companies selling there, and it's opening up more and more. And I think that the fundamental difference in just to compare the American and the Korean car markets is the focus on small cars. American car manufacturers they're getting a lot better, but they are not good at making small cars. And in Korea, you have a small car transportation system, and that's changing. And I think that you will see a higher penetration of U.S. sales into the Korean market in the coming years as the American products become more competitive. But it's I think that's the fundamental reason why there's this myth of the Korean market being closed to outside competitors. And finally, I want to talk about the electric vehicle and talk about a company that is not a car manufacturer, but is in the process of revolutionizing the car industry, and that's LG Chem. And what you see there is the Chevy Volt battery pack, and that's actually the Chevy Volt, an American-made car, the first electric vehicle to be mass-produced in America. It's going to be introduced later this year. And they needed a battery pack, and everyone assumed that this battery contract would be awarded to a startup in Massachusetts called A123 Systems. And in 2008, when they announced the contract award, it was a shock that this Korean company, LG Chem, won the contract. And the story of that Korean battery and that LG Chem battery is a very interesting one. It started in the midst of the IMF crisis when LG is one of the large conglomerates in Korea, and LG Chem is its chemicals division. And LG senior management sent a call out to all parts of the company saying, we want to know what is going to be the disruptive technology 10 years from today, and we want to start investing in that today. And one of the chief responses was electric vehicles. There were no electric vehicles 10 years ago. But LG Chem saw that as a future market. And they decided, we are going to create the batteries for these cars. They started this process of heavy investment and heavy research and development 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, actually, 98. And it was not easy. The lithium-ion chemistry of the batteries that are in these cars is prone to what's called thermal runaway, which is another way of saying explosion. And you don't want to, obviously, you don't want to be driving around with something that might explode. So what they did was they designed a battery from the ground up with safety in mind, and they created a specific way of partitioning the lithium-ion cells with ceramic plates that would isolate any one cell that goes wrong. And they essentially, starting with safety first, and then after they developed the basic chemistry of the battery, they then went on to develop the manufacturing process. So in the end, by 2008, when this battery was needed, they had a product that was safer than anyone else's, more durable than anyone else's, and because they had been working on it so long and perfected the manufacturing process, it is cheaper to produce than anyone else's. And just 2 years ago, you had lithium-ion cells going for an average of around $2,000 per kilowatt hour cost. LG Chem now is offering to car makers this advanced battery system that is safe and durable and can last 10 years, 100,000 miles. Interesting to hear those numbers again. And doing it for $400 per kilowatt hour. That's how low they've gotten. That was a Deutsche Bank report I just read a couple weeks ago. That's the price point we've reached. The Chevy Volt contract is important, but it's mostly going to be symbolic compared to the potential of this battery. You could see this battery going into literally millions of cars, and at several $1,000s a pop, that is a multi-billion-dollar market for LG Chem, and a market that did not exist 10 years ago when they started working on this product. And just as another example of a Korean company that is looking forward, to bring it back to POSCO, POSCO has recently made a multi-million-dollar investment in lithium, in removing lithium ions from seawater. We have a minimal amount of lithium that can be mined in the world. And if we do have an explosion of, I shouldn't use the word explosion and vehicle in the same word, sorry. If we do have a dramatic increase in the number of electric vehicles being sold, we're going to quickly max out our lithium reserves in the entire world. However, there's a little bit of lithium in every cup of seawater. So POSCO has invested a multi-million-dollar research and development project with the help of the Korean government to come up with a cheaper way of getting lithium out of seawater. And again, it's not a problem today, but it's a problem that, here's an example of a company that sees a problem that might be happening 10 years from now and is starting to work on the solution today. So essentially, you know, I think that the message that we would relate is that the Korean car industry is very different than it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. There was a day and age in Korea when the president said, build a road, and by golly, a road got built. Build a steel factory, and a steel factory got built. The challenges facing the Korean automobile industry today are more, how do we convince a North American car buyer when they're afraid of losing their job so they're not buying cars, and coming up with a creative response to that. It's truly, the Korean car industry is truly a global industry today. And we're seeing the entrance of the Korean car manufacturers in a large scale, in a large way, into that industry and competing on a level playing field. So thank you very much, and I guess we'll take questions now.
Myung and Sam, thank you very much for your very informative and entertaining presentation. We will now proceed with the question-answer session that we will conclude promptly, no later than 1:30 p.m. As always at KEI programs, I would like to ask our distinguished guests to please focus on questions as brief as possible rather than statements, for the sake of allowing everyone a fair opportunity to ask a question. Mark, please remember